Of all the Labyrinth Architects, this Phalanx one is, of course, the most annoying. Here I am, going much faster. Those Axiom darts almost ended up killing me. I didn't even see them. All right, with them dead, we come to the section that I was most afraid of. Because Vorgeth was a known quantity, and Dul Incarus is technically just a combat encounter. But having to do some platforming and running across the edge of a building with Warlock Jump, while I'm always at the risk of being blasted away, while I'm trying to preserve my flawless status, it's stressful. Shattered Throne was the first dungeon I ever attempted. And while I defeated Vorgeth and obtained the Wish Ender, I never defeated Dul Incarus. So after all this time, here I am, not only aiming for a solo completion, but for also my first flawless dungeon run. We of course start here in Erebus. The first objective is to clear all of the towers by proceeding in whatever order is determined by the sigils that appear. I believe with the knowledge I have now that they're tied with Riven, which makes sense since, you know, Forsaken, which is when this DLC came out, or this dungeon came out, was part of that expansion. So having the sigils tied with Riven makes sense lore-wise. I don't actually pull up a map here. I literally spent like 7 hours in the dungeon when I first attempted it. So I have like a pretty decent idea of where these sigils are. Of course, it's not really a good enough memory for, you know, to do any like sort of speed running with it, but I do have a general idea of the direction I need to head. I mean, that's just naturally going to be the result of spending a trillion hours in here, but here we are. Like, you know, after going through all the campaigns and after attempting, you know, a couple other dungeons, honestly, this combat section is really not too crazy, especially when I know, you know, to look out for the hobgoblins attacking us on the bridge. I know that, you know, to actually use my power weapons and heavy weapons to do actual damage instead of, you know, just inting with my primary. So honestly, I'm just running around this location until I defeat all the Labyrinth Architects. I don't ever really, like I said, end up pulling out my map because I can't be bothered. It's just, you know, it's a pretty confined area, especially with an amplified Arc Soul. I can run around pretty fast, and I'm decently familiar with the location. So even though it might take me a minute or two to figure out where I need to go, it's fairly straightforward, you know, all things considered. All right, as I make my way up this bridge, I have to be careful of the phalanxes that spawn in, because I know especially if I die, it's not going to be because of, you know, any of the enemies doing like a ton of damage to me, especially because things seem pretty normalized around here. And but it's going to be like, you know, one of the phalanxes tossing me off the edge of the map, or if I'm not careful with my edge turns, I'm going to like blow myself up. So honestly, those are the only really areas of concern that I need to be worried about. All right, I noticed that the Taken have spawned like halfway across the map, and for a second, you know, I debate whether or not I should just, you know, try to kill the architect from halfway across the map, but, you know, I decided that's probably not for the best. Killing it is, you know, not that big of a deal, especially when I can just proc and switch with my edge transit and take it out in just a couple of hits. Pretty easy, you know, compared to the first time I was in here. You know, it's complete stark contrast in how I'm behaving and clearing out this area and how I'm approaching my combat abilities. Like, just using my heavy weapons to take out the mini bosses is actually like such a big difference that I cannot believe it took me, like, you know, how long was I on double primary? Oh man, those are not the days. Of all the Labyrinth Architects, this Phalanx one is of course the most annoying. Not only because it, you know, it threatens to push you off the map, but because it's the arena it's located in, and, you know, is really scuffed and prime for getting launched off the map, which is no doubt on purpose. Like, the entire back half of the map is just, you know, a cliff's edge, and when you spawn in, you're forced down a narrow path where it's, you know, only objective is you. So pretty, in terms of the Labyrinth Architects, I'd say that's pretty up there. Probably the most annoying. It's not like, you know, any of the other architects are that difficult, and this one is probably the easiest because, you know, it's just a Vandal, just spawns a shield. It's pretty weak. All right, after clearing all of the towers, we can just go ahead and head back to the hollowed center in the middle. Be careful to avoid the darkness blast, but I mean, after having to face the Taken or the Kel Echo from Prophecy, you know, what can I say? Not that big of a deal. And with that, we've cleared the hallowed center or the hallowed ground, and we're making our way down into, you know, further down to the descent area. I completely forgot what it's called, but yeah, the descent is fairly generic. We're here at about 12 minutes and we're already here at the descent. So far, no deaths. Pretty good. You know, I'm gonna take my time. I know that there's a Minotaur that spawns down here, and there's no really good reason for me to go down prematurely, especially when I can just pick off enemies with my Vorgeth curve. So, you know, I'm staying up, taking the high ground, playing it a little bit safer than, you know, I probably need to, but that's because I am going for flawless, and, you know, when you're going for flawless, probably better to play it safe. No real reason for me to speedrun, as that is not my objective. Good shot there. Wow, got the top of the head. Honestly, that might have been due to the natural gravitation of the arrows to the body thanks to Amethyst, because I do remember a phalanx here. I did also hear it. It goes down with just one shot with the aberrant action, which is pretty crazy. Just goes to show you how powerful my weapons are, and how, you know, how much more well equipped I am compared to the first time here, and, you know, how much knowing the spawn locations of enemies can really save you a lot of trouble. Like here, I can just go into Song of Flame in order to take care of the mini boss instantly, and, you know, what used to be a moderately challenging annoyance is rendered completely null in just a couple of seconds. And with that, basically this entire descent area is cleared. Of course, next up is this giant bridge, but honestly, with my bow and arrow, honestly, I don't need a sniper, so go ahead and pick off all of the enemies from a distance. Arguably, here I'm playing it too safe, but like I said, not going for a speedrun, so I can just stay back, pop a couple of shots here, just playing, you know, the edge of the door, trying to get in through the little cracks, but, you know, there's no room for me to do so. And with that, the enemies in this room are pretty much gone. And honestly, I didn't even realize this, but I can straight up take care of the entire other room from over here as well. Wow, I'm such a good shot. Thank you, aim assist. Really appreciate that. Make sure there's no phalanxes on the ground there. Also, I remember messing up that jump a couple of times, but, you know, I've gotten way more familiar with a Warlock jump and how it's slightly more momentum based, and the gliding, honestly. And I honestly do think I prefer the gliding over just normal jumps. You know, I've played games with, you know, regular jumping, and the gliding is honestly really nice. The distance you can cover, especially with the burst glides, is pretty crazy. Now, this Ogre Catwalk section is probably the only section I'm afraid of up until Vorgeth, which, I mean, it's fairly soon, but I'm less afraid of this section and more afraid of myself, because if you didn't watch the first attempt of me here in Shattered Throne, this section and the particularly the jumping was quite the catastrophe. Luckily, like I said, you know, I am a bit more familiar with the mechanics. I suppose also having to go for the Wish Ender relics at the back of the map made this section a little more stressful, especially since, you know, this is my first time here, and, you know, I probably realistically should not have been doing the Wish Ender mission the first time in Shattered Throne, but you know what? I did it, and it was done. You know, a lot of tough lessons learned in that attempt. So I do switch my bow here to take care of the ogres, but that's because I've run out of special ammo. Here I'm still being a little bit, you know, careful with my jumps, because the little divots in the beams, sides of the beams, to make it like decorative, are something that's tripped me up from the collisions. So, you know, I gotta be a little bit careful, make sure I don't overestimate my ability, but also, you know, understand that, you know, I know how to jump. But, you know, just taking care of the ogres one by one, not too big of a deal. Just making sure I am aware and taking cover each time one spawns in, because if the ogre hits me, like, I'm basically not getting back on ground, because, you know, of the rapid rate of fire from the volley of the ogre's attacks. So with the catwalk section done, I'm pretty much unstressed out now because this entire shadow throw section is freeload for both my Vorgeth curve and for my amplified soul. Like literally Vorgeth curve like insta kills one shadow thrall on a hit, and each of the ice crystals will just explode and kill a bunch of thralls. So literally it's freeload farming for my Vorgeth curve. Just goes to show you how, how much of a difference just having, a single weapon can really make. Because man, when it comes to adds, this thing is crazy. It's a beast. I've also heard good things about the Trinity Ghoul, but I'm still working on finishing the Callus for that. I mean, I made this jump on accident. I'm going to rewind here because when I made this jump, I thought I was going to fall by accident because I was overestimating my abilities. And I was like, oh my God, if I die to a single jump over like a non-combat section, I was like, oh, it's going to be over. So I decided to play a little bit safe and just travel across the black goo because, I can basically assure that I can kill enemies faster than, the damage from the black goo will do to me. So no big deal. And I'm, I didn't want to be blasted off by any of the taken blights. Well, technically they're not blights, they're taken like blast things, but doesn't really matter. Anyways, these phalanxes here are also a little bit spooky, mainly because, phalanxes can push me off, but once I get closer to the top of the hill, it's pretty much all but guaranteed that, I'm safe. So this section was also complete breeze, it's not like a main encounter section, so it's just a traveling section, so not too bad. Moving on, we're going to this encounter, the encounter that gave me the second most trouble. I mean, apparently I think the catwalks actually gave me the most trouble, but man, Vorgeth technically the most trouble, especially combat wise. The petitioners marks that you have to earn by killing the keeper petitions is something that tripped me up because this area is something I haven't really mentioned, but the entirety of Shattered Throne is actually way too dark. Like the first time I was here, I didn't think it was that bad, but wow, after having gone through other areas and playing more of the game, it's way too dark in here. But it does make the enemies stand out, but I do remember not being able to keep track of the petitioner's mark the first time around. In any case, I obtain the petitioner's burden after taking care of all 4 petitioners and their marks, and can go ahead and dump in to begin damage phase. So the Axiom darts are really spooky. I'm trying to remember to activate and proc bane switch. I can definitely get a bit closer, but I want to play a bit safe because, I'm trying not to die here. So I do a pretty decent amount of damage to Vorgeth. Honestly, I think I play a bit too safe here as I go in for a hide behind cover and not go for another damage rotation. But realistically, with the amount of time I had, I wasn't really paying attention to when the shield came up back on Vorgeth. But if the time I had was a little bit when the Keeper's Petitioners spawned in, I probably did have enough damage to just straight up kill Vorgeth in one phase. And the hectic nature of this fight and Vorgeth in the middle and you not having too much cover and all the damage from the wizards does make this fight in particular still a bit challenging. And the speed of the encounter is also something that is really, really up there. Like I don't know how many encounters I've actually had to face where you had to keep on going as fast as possible because the petitioner marks only had a limited amount of time, and Vorgeth in the middle is really annoying. I mean, obviously, I know from my first time around here, I can take it much slower than I did here, but here I am going much faster. Those Axiom darts almost ended up killing me. I didn't even see them, but now that I am aware, I am going to do my best to kite around and just focus on Vorgeth and take care of the Axiom darts later. And there we go. Vorgeth is down. Second phase. Honestly, beside that one time I almost died from the Axiom darts, blindsiding me, not too bad, not too bad. The Keeper Petitioners, the mechanic is slightly stressful, but knowing that they spawn in, the 4 corners of the map is like a circle, but you just have to go clockwise or semi-clockwise, and just knowing to take care of the keeper petitions and obtain the petitioner marks, it's not too bad that time around. Definitely goes to show you the amount of progress I have made in my journey thus far. Luckily, I did not end up dying at Vorgeth. So from here on out, it's all completely brand new territory. Technically, I did clear this area with 2 chatters from the stream, but I barely remember that, and I was pretty much sped through this area. I think the only section I really remembered, besides having to fight Dul Incarus at the end, was the section where you have to run across the wall and you have to stay on the edge, and there's a bunch of taken pushers that will just are trying to shove you off the map. I still have no idea what the name for them is. I feel like Taken Blights are a good name, but they're not technically Taken Blights. But whatever the Taken Trollers are, that might be a good name. The Taken Trollers, trolling me by pushing me off the map. Wow. All right, nothing to it there. It's going to continue on this ascent. This section is definitely all about, taking in the scale of what you are, scaling. Oh, where's my thesaurus when you need it? But, the scale of the spire is quite inspiring. I mean, these blasts of air are quite convenient. I don't know what happened there. I guess maybe I was just afraid of the Taken Captain pushing me off, so I decided to just, go ahead and Phoenix dive down, but I don't know why I did that, but it doesn't really matter. I don't know if like the random air blasts are like the most sensical way of scaling tower. Like maybe might have preferred us like just running upstairs, but I understand why that might have gotten tiresome, even though it might have made more sense like, cinematically. But it's not like we don't do our fair share of running upstairs anyways. The Shadow Thralls here, no big deal. Not really, I don't really remember the section at all, so it's gonna be a bit careful when clearing out these enemies. All right, with them dead, we come to the section that I was most afraid of, because Vorgeth was a known quantity and Dul Incarus is technically just a combat encounter, but having to do some platforming and running across the edge of a building with Warlock jump while I'm always at the risk of being blasted away while I'm trying to preserve my flawless status is it's stressful. This is unironically probably the most stressed I was in the dungeon thus far, because I still hadn't faced Dul Incarus, and I was like, well, things can always go wrong at the very end, because I did remember that she had a mechanic attached to her, but I didn't exactly remember what to do with the mechanic. But that's for me to figure out when I have to solve that. But honestly, the running across the wall phase was not too bad at all. There was it's not like it was the easiest, but what are you gonna do? All right, I reached the top of the spire and I start the encounter pretty much instantly by deploying my Bleak Watcher, and I actually end up going Transcendence, which is something I am really bad at doing, but it's more like, I don't ever really need to go Transcendence, or I haven't needed to go Transcendence thus far on the map. It's like, I don't know, maybe could have gone Transcendence during Vorgeth, but I mean, I didn't really need to. Oh, it's a little bit risky there, but I just went ahead and started this encounter right off the bat. So I know that there's obviously some sort of mechanic attached to Dul Incarus, and as I kill the big dudes, I am able to pick up some finite thoughts, which are basically look the exact same as the petitioner marks, texture-wise at least. And here, as I'm trying to DPS Dul Incarus, I'm realizing that, I probably do want all 3 stacks of finite thought in order to do enough damage. But here, as I realize that there is a limited amount of time to both the amount of time I can carry those finite thoughts, I do realize the well in the middle is for clearing those, clearing that stacked, because I've encountered something familiar during the coil. Whenever one of Ribbon's things had whatever. It was, I mean, one of the levels when in Ribbon's lair, we had a mechanic similar to this. I think it was like a plague bear or whatever. But after enough time, the big dude does get a immunity shield, and of course I'm a bit confused. And of course without the finite thought stacks, I can't exactly deal damage to Dul Incarus. So I'm a little bit confused, and I'm just running around trying to do my best to survive. And this is technically the most stressed I've been thus far in this encounter, because I'm like, what is happening here? And that's when I realized I can actually do damage to the crystal. So I did shoot at the crystal earlier, if you were noticing in my gameplay while I was commentating over it with something completely irrelevant. But I didn't notice a damage marker from the crystal when I first shot it, because I noticed it spawning and I was like, oh, that's kind of odd. But I didn't see any damage markers, so I just assumed it was part of the level. But, you know, when there was nothing else for me to attack, obviously I figured out that I need to destroy the crystal, and that does go ahead and initiate the second phase of this encounter. I mean, technically, it's not really a phase. It's a... Actually, I suppose in technically, it is a phase, but it's not like a designated phase. It's the same phase, just repeating, which kind of makes this mechanically pretty simple. Just collect the finite thoughts and, you know, get out of there. So as I do pick up the finite thoughts, though, I do realize that unlike the Petitioner Burdens, they don't refresh the stack timer, which is really, really annoying, because now I'm here having completed the entirety of the second phase, and I did like 0 damage to Dul Incarus, which means I have to wait for a complete second rotation, or for it to complete the second rotation. And it is also cool that she does move around the map. It does give you a little bit more room to work around and play with as, you know, she rotates around. And it's also just cool enemy behavior wise, you know. I mean, it doesn't really change anything. This room is pretty symmetrical. It's not like there's a complete distinction in, you know, the separate areas of the map, but it is a cool little neat touch. But, you know, since I do realize that, you know, the marks have a limited amount of time on them, I realize I need to kill all of the big dudes at around the same time, or at least hold off on picking up the marks up until I can kill them all. Unfortunately, the edge transit, enemy-wise, they're a bit annoying to take care of, mainly because I'm trying not to kill myself. That's what I was trying to say with the edge transit, right? Because, you know, I'm if I get too close, I will kill myself, and if they get too close to me, they will kill me. So it is I did take my sweet time trying to kill them, and unfortunately, that was enough time for the crystal to spawn in. So that was an entire phase where I didn't even pick up any of the finite thoughts. But the damage does persist over time, which is good because that basically helps me speed things up the second time around. So honestly, could be considered part of a strategy, you know, saving it out for a second phase. But honestly, I just need to work out figure out what, like, you know, what a good damage rotation here is in order to kill them as fast as possible, in order to just pick everything up. But here we go. As I'm nearing the kill of all 3 of them, I go ahead and pop my super in order to pick up all of the marks of finite thought. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just not picking up the third one. I guess I'm trying to stay alive, because I guess staying alive and maintaining flawless is still technically the most important thing to me right now, because it's like, all right, well, I have to do like 30 phases of this. I'll do 30 phases. I already gone ahead and done like 4. But here we are. Dul Incarus is nearing the end of her health, and with 3 stacks of finite thought, she goes down. Wow. There we go. Shattered Throne flawless. That was finally soloed Shattered Throne, and while I was at it, I went ahead and got the flawless. There we go. You can see the little triumphs pop up. Seriously, never again. Boom. All things considered, pretty easy. I mean, I managed to flawless it solo on my first time here after a couple of months. So honestly, difficulty wise, pretty easy. I mean, mechanically, nothing was complex. Dul Incarus was easier than Vorgeth for sure, mainly because this room is much smaller and it's much easier to keep track of all the enemies. And the Petitioner marks were straight up annoying, and Vorgeth itself was a way worse boss in terms of damage and everything else. So there we go. Time it took 41 minutes and 19 seconds. 367 kills, 52 precision kills, 63 orbs created, and 21,948,872 damage dealt to Dul Incarus. You know,